secret tip on how to quickly assess how much of a mortgage you will qualify for. Stay tuned because this is a video you don't want to miss. Hi, I am Anthony Lindsay, and I've been in finance for over 30 years. I say this because I'm not someone that's just getting up and running with no life experience that's just trying to get you a mortgage. Instead, I'm trying to get you the house that you want to live in and educate you along the way. So, getting a mortgage is not rocket science. I'm going to go through all of the things that you need to know to be an informed mortgage client. So, it's not rocket science. It really just comes down to three key things, and that's credit, income, and deposit. I'm going to talk you through all three of those, as well as explaining the full process from end to end. First thing that you need to realize is a mortgage is a really big loan. That's also the name of my book. If you look at a mortgage as a really big loan, it will help you understand the process a lot better, and it will make it easier for you to go through the process without stress, without drama. Now, I find that most mortgage clients fall into one of three categories. Either they oversimplify it, they undersimplify it, or they realize that it's somewhere in the middle, so they use a broker. So the first thing that you want to do is understand that you don't want to stress over rates. You might not like me saying that, but don't stress over rates. It's more about an affordable monthly repayment for you. It's pounds, not percentages, and it takes longer than you think. So the reason why I say don't stress over rates is rates go up, rates go down. Your monthly payments is what you need to focus on. On someone that worked in a pre-litigation department for over a decade, I know that quite often people get themselves into a sticky situation with their mortgage because they take on a mortgage that is not affordable to them. So if you take out a fixed rate mortgage, make sure that the monthly payments are something that you can afford. Because as you know, your home may be repossessed if you do not keep up the repayments on your mortgage. So if you're just asking a broker, what's the best rate? It's not really useful. It's not really helpful because you may not qualify for that best rate. So a mortgage broker is always going to find the best rate for you based on your circumstances. When a mortgage broker asks you, how much do you have for a deposit? Don't say a percentage. So don't say 5%, 10%, 15%. Say a pound amount. It's way more useful because let's do the math. If you're buying in London and the house costs £450,000 and you tell a broker, well, I have a 10% deposit. The assumption is you have £45,000. But what if you buy a house or you find a house you want to buy for £500,000? Then all of a sudden you don't have a 10% deposit anymore. So make sure you tell them the pound amount because it's not just about the deposit. It's also about some of the fees that you'll have to pay out of your savings. So always tell them the amount that you have in savings. And first-time buyers, trust me on this one. It takes longer than you think. If you've watched shows on TV about purchasing properties, it looks like people go out on one weekend, find a home, then make an offer. The offer is accepted, and then in 3 months, they're moving in. Not true. It doesn't work like that. Looking for a home is a full-time job. And the entire process, once you've had an offer accepted, which I'll go through shortly, once you've had an offer accepted, takes about 4 to 6 months. The UK has one of the longest mortgage processes in the developed world. Yes, that's true. So it's 4 to 6 months. It takes as long as it takes, and it's only as fast as the slowest person. So don't let your mortgage broker or your solicitor or you slow the deal down by being slow. Now let's look at credit, because this is the first of the three key things you need to think about when getting a mortgage. And as a reminder, I'm going to give you a really good tool. It's a tool that I use to quickly assess how much you can qualify for with a mortgage. And I'll give you a hint right now. It's got nothing to do with going on Zoopla or going on a bank's website and using the affordability calculator. So make sure you get your credit report. So the first thing you want to do is make sure that you go and get your credit report from checkmyfile.com. So go to checkmyfile.com, get your credit report. You should be getting your credit report at least once per year, reviewing it, make sure that everything is accurate and up to date. But never, ever, 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 ever wait until you're ready to get your mortgage to check your credit report, because a lot of the things that you're going to need to resolve potentially take a couple months to resolve. So always get your credit report. The second one, stop applying for credit. So once you've decided you are going to get a mortgage, stop applying for new credit, because that can impact your credit score. It may not impact your credit profile, which is a completely different thing, but it may impact your credit score. And lastly, clear small balances. If you have small balances on credit cards or small loans, anything of that nature, it's better to clear the balance out of the savings that you were using for a deposit than to have the small payments on there, because that will impact your affordability. So make sure that you check your credit file, make sure that you stop applying for credit, and make sure that you clear small balances. Now we're going to look at income. Income is a very important part because you're borrowing money. So you need to be able to pay it back, and the bank needs to know how you're going to pay it back. So know your employment status and salary. That might sound really simple, but it's very rare that I speak to someone and say, "What's your salary?" and they tell me their annual salary. Quite often people say, "Well, I make 2,700 a month, or I make 1,500 a month." We need to know your salary. So what you want to do is make sure you look on your contract. If you're a fixed term employee, then you'll be able to know what your annual salary is. You should also get your P60 to see what HMRC says you made the previous year. Are you on probation? Some lenders will not lend if you are started a new job, if you have started a new job, if you're on probation. They'll want to see 3 months worth of bank statements after you get off probation. So it's not to say you won't be able to get a mortgage, but understand, are you on probation, off probation, that you can tell the mortgage broker when you speak to them. And as I said, what does HMRC say? So if you're doing side hustles, if you're doing anything that you're not reporting the income, which you shouldn't be doing, but if you're doing that, you can't use that income towards your affordability. So they're going to need to see a P60. They're going to need to see a employment contract. If you're self-employed, you need SA 302 and your tax overviews. You can get away with 1 year, but usually you're going to need 2 to 3 years. And second income. If you have a second income, banks are smart. So if you've just started the job, to boost your affordability, a lot of times you'll find you cannot use that second income. Some lenders won't use 100% of the second income, but most lenders are going to say, is this sustainable? Do you have 2 jobs and it's not sustainable over the long period? And another quick tip, a lot of people don't think about this. If you have a full-time job and a part-time job, make sure you check the employment contract for your full-time job, that there's no clauses in there preventing you from having a second job or requiring you to have permission to have the second job. And here's the big one, deposit. As I said, people will ask about the deposit. So the deposit is not a percentage, it's a pound amount. Remember that. It's not a percentage, it's a pound amount. We need to know how much you actually have in a bank account that you can prove with a bank statement. The questions that will be asked is, where did it come from? Can it be tracked? Did it just fall out of the sky into your bank account? Is it from crypto? Things like that. So make sure that the money is traceable, trackable, and it makes sense. You may be getting a gifted deposit. So you might be in a situation where you have a rich aunt or uncle or a parent that's willing to help you out. That is fantastic. Lenders, they understand the bank of mom and dad. Not every lender will allow a gifted deposit for the entire deposit of the property. So you may need to have some skin in the game yourself. And some lenders will not accept gifted deposits from someone that's not a blood relative. But there are specialist lenders that can address all of these situations. So don't worry. Lastly, you don't pay it until towards the end. So if you have a deposit of £50,000 towards your purchase, you do need to prove that you have the £50,000, but that money doesn't come out of your bank account until pretty close to you getting the key. So that's good news. You can continue to get interest on that money while you are going through the process, which takes 4 to 6 months. Let me just talk to you. If you are someone who is interested in property, if you want to meet lenders and mortgage brokers, and speak to people and ask questions, learn from others, and network, make sure you register for the East London Property Expo. It's the sixth year that we're doing it. The East London Property Expo gathers buyers, sellers, investors, lenders, mortgage brokers, so you can ask questions. There'll be solicitors there and accountants. So you can ask questions, find out the answers to the questions that you might have from a range of people without being pressured, without being sold to, with no credit checks. And you can network, and maybe you can find some other people. If you're someone that's looking to do a collaborative deal and invest in property, you may find someone that may want to do that with you. So that's the East London Property Expo. Scan the QR code, March 21st in London, March 21st, 2026. All right. So I say it all the time, speak to a broker first. Don't wait until you've gone out and found a property, had an offer accepted to figure out if you can even afford that property. As I said at the beginning, a lot of people think that either the process is really simple, those people tend to go to the bank. Bad idea. Always go to a broker because a broker works with that bank plus others. So you're always going to be able to get the best rate that you qualify for based on your criteria. If you go to your local bank, they can only talk to you about their products. So you're losing out on choice. Plus, if you don't meet their criteria, because maybe you've had a credit bump or a missed payment or something like that, they'll just say no. Whereas if you go to a broker, you tell them your circumstance in advance, they'll be able to find the lender that will lend based on those circumstances. Brokers do work with multiple lenders. Some work with a open market, some work with selective lenders, and we guide you through the process. So you have several different kinds of brokers. Some brokers don't charge a fee. If they can afford to do that, that's great. Other brokers charge a percentage of the mortgage, and other brokers like myself, we charge flat fees. Regardless of how much you are paying, if you are paying, understand that a good broker is saving you time, saving you money, and saving you hassle. They're taking the stress off your shoulders because they're able to walk you through the process. We're able to refer you to solicitors. If you're buying your first home, you're going to have a lot of questions. And as someone who is a bank manager in retail banking for over 3 decades, I know that banking staff, as great as they are, don't have the time to do all the things that a broker can do for you. So a good broker is worth 10 times whatever they're charging you in most cases because of the time they save, the stress they save, and the ability to answer your questions in real time. Plus, if you're like me, we have hours outside of 9 to 5 as well as on weekends. So always, always, always speak to a broker 6 months before you think you're ready, that they can help you prepare and get the very best deal that you qualify for. This is the bit that a lot of people have been waiting for, and I'm going to share a tip with you on how to quickly assess how much of a mortgage you will qualify for. So, as I said, speak to a broker. The first stage after speaking to that broker is they're going to get you an agreement in principle. And it's important that you get the agreement in principle before you go and make an offer on a property because you don't really know how much you'll be able to borrow unless you've talked to a mortgage broker. If you've gone on Zoopla, if you've gone on Rightmove, if you've gone on the lender's website, keep in mind those sites are going to give you a really broad brush of what you might be able to borrow. And 9 times out of 10, when people have come to me with one of those assessments, it's overestimated how much they can borrow. So here's that tip that I promised you. This is how I quickly calculate how much someone might qualify for their mortgage. I take the combined salary. So this is PAYE now, or it's self-employed salary. I take the full salary. Let's just say you're on 50,000 a year. Your wife is on 25,000. I take the 50 plus the 25 and I multiply it by 4. The reason why I do that before brokers start saying, yes, but there are higher multiples. I know this. But the reason why it's always a safe bet as a consumer to use a multiple of 4 for your salary is because if you're paying out on things, if you have loans, if you have credit cards, a lot of that is going to come out of your affordability anyway. So even if you get a higher multiple, you won't be able to afford the higher amount because of the payments that you are paying out. So, first step in assessing how much you might be able to get for a mortgage is take the income and multiply it by 4. So let's just say you're on £50,000 a year combined. 50,000 times 4 is 200,000. That's the mortgage amount that you can get. That's not the house price. So to get the house price, you'll add whatever your deposit is. So your salary, 50,000 times 4, 200,000 pound mortgage. You have a 50,000 pound deposit, 200 plus 50, 250,000 pound house price. When you speak to a mortgage broker, they'll be able to work around the edges on that, work out your affordability. But if you use that formula, other than having severe credit issues or something else going on, you're more likely than not to be in the right ballpark. You'll find that what you'll find on Zoopla or Rightmove is probably going to overestimate it. So the first thing is we're going to get you an agreement in principle. Then we're going to do a valuation. So it's a valuation and not a survey. Evaluation and not a survey. Always remember the valuation is for the lender, not for you. You can choose to do a RICS survey. That's assessing things like property things. So things within the property that you may have concerns about. That's a survey. But the bank is going to do a valuation. There's 3 outcomes from evaluation. It can come in at the number. So let's just say you've made an offer, it's been accepted, 500,000. The bank is now doing the valuation. It can come in at that 500,000. The bank might come back and say, we think it's worth more than the 500,000. The third option, which is what would potentially cause a problem, is if they come back and say they think it's worth less than the 500,000. So this is the valuation. So there's 3 outcomes: on target, over target, or under target. Really, the only one that is problematic is under target. The next part of the process is the mortgage offer. So once the lender has done the valuation, done the full underwriting, and assessed the application, so they've looked at pay slips, looked at all of the different things to do the underwriting, they'll make a full mortgage offer. A full mortgage offer comes after the underwriting is done. When they make that offer, it will have a date on it, so it will be valid for a period of time. But for the most part, the broker has now done their job. They've got you the mortgage offer. If they're like me, they will have already introduced you to a solicitor, because as part of the full mortgage application, you will need to provide your solicitor's details. So once you have that offer, it gets sent to the solicitor. You get a copy of that mortgage offer. And from there, most of the work is then done between your solicitor and the seller's solicitor. So what you want to do is make sure that the full mortgage offer is what you applied for. You're going to want to review that with the mortgage broker before the mortgage broker formally hands you over to the solicitor. During this period where the solicitors are communicating with each other, the solicitors will be communicating about deeds and they'll be reviewing documents. Make sure you stay in touch with your solicitor. Make sure that you're responsive. This is the part of the deal that can take 4 to 6 months. So make sure you're checking your email and you are responsive, because you can delay things. Then you will decide on an exchange date. This is when things get exciting. You'll decide and agree with the seller when you want to exchange contracts and when you want to complete. This is important, especially if you're renting, because you want to make sure that your exchange date and your completion date coincide with maybe the notice period you have for where you're renting, because you don't want to be in a situation where you're paying rent and you're paying your mortgage. So be really careful and speak to your solicitor, plan it out if you're renting, that you don't end up paying a rent and a mortgage. Also take into consideration, if you're going to be doing renovations, your payments on your mortgage or your repayments have nothing to do with when you move in to the property. It's about when you complete. So if you complete and then you're going to do flooring and kitchen and bathroom and don't move in for 3 months, that's not the concern of the lender. Some lenders do actually have a delayed first mortgage payment, but you'll be paying interest for those 3 months. And not every lender does that. So view it as your completion date is the day you get your keys. And at the end of the day, you don't come to a mortgage broker for a mortgage. You come to a mortgage broker to get keys to your own property. So I've talked you through the entire process. This is it. It's about credit, income, deposit. The process is you'll get an agreement in principle first, then you start looking for a property. They'll convert that agreement in principle into a full mortgage offer. Once you get the survey done, if you choose to do a survey, but they'll certainly do a valuation. The lender will do a valuation. Once you get the valuation report, it can be one of three things: on target, over target, under target. Under target's the only one that you need to worry about. You get your full mortgage offer, and the rest is between your solicitor and their solicitor. This has been hopefully a good overview. I've done it at a quicker pace. I do have other videos where I break it down each stage in more detail. But the key things you need to remember is your credit. Make sure your credit is good. You don't have any missed payments, late payments, CCJs, defaults. If you have any small things, just pay them off. Your income, make sure you understand what your salary profile is, how much you make, if you get bonuses, etc. And your deposit. Is your deposit traceable? Does it make sense? Are you getting a gifted deposit from a family member? In which case you would need a gift letter. So how do you prepare? Tidy up your bank statements. Make sure you tidy up your bank statements. You don't have just random things on your bank statement. Check your credit report. As I always say, you should be checking your credit report at least once per year. My best advice would be to check your credit report every 6 months, but check your credit report before you apply for your mortgage. Maximize your deposit by putting it into a high interest savings account. I'm not giving tax advice or legal advice or financial advice in that sense, but you can shop around to get a high interest savings account. And if you're not planning on buying for the next 2 or 3 or 4 years, you should look into the lifetime ISA. The lifetime ISA has some great benefits if and only if you're looking to use it towards purchasing a home and you're not buying within the next year. If you don't use a lifetime ISA in the right way, there are huge penalties and huge downsides. So I would avoid it in that case. And make sure you speak to a broker. If you don't have a broker, I'd love to speak to you. My information will be in the description. My name is Anthony Lindsay. And as I said, I've been in finance for over 30 years. I'm here to support and guide you. If you're a first-time buyer, it can be a stressful process, but I'm here to talk you through, hold your hand, give you as much or as little support as you need. But understand, it's not a simple process as in you can just go into a property group and ask a few random questions, get an answer, and know that you will qualify for a specific mortgage. It's not super complex. So if you're an accountant, don't overcomplicate it. The process for getting a mortgage is not purely an accounting exercise. So quite often I find that accountants overcomplicate the situation. In my experience, people that sit in the middle, that realize their time is worth more than trying to do it themselves and going from one lender to another lender to another lender. So they realize that going to a broker is going to save them time, save them admin, and give them support. But they also realize that they need that support in order to find the best product. They need a broker who can shop around for them. And the last thing that I would say about brokers and finding a broker, if you can't be honest with your broker and tell them all of your information as far as what's needed for the mortgage, if you feel like you have to hold something back, do not work with that broker. You should only work with a broker that you trust and you can give them a full picture of what you're looking to achieve, what budget you're working with, how much of a deposit you have. So if you're not honest about your deposit, that means you don't trust your broker. That means you should not be working with him or her. Make sure you like, make sure you subscribe, and make sure you share this video with anyone you know who's looking for a mortgage. This video is not designed to give financial advice, tax advice, or legal advice. And it's also not designed to replace speaking to a qualified professional who knows your individual circumstances. So make sure you always speak to someone, share your information, that they can give you the best advice. Make sure you like, make sure you subscribe, and please leave a comment. If there's something that I've explained too fast or too slow, I love your comments. I always try to respond to the comments. I have lots of videos about different aspects for mortgages, remortgages, bridging loans, and other products. So please share, please like. And a lot of people do watch the videos, but then they don't subscribe. Please subscribe. It means a lot to me. And it will also help that YouTube algorithm put this information in front of more people. Thanks for watching.